All right, I'm joined today by Michael Stenbæk Litven. Thanks for joining, Mike.
Yeah.
This is a remote access pass pre-conference chat. So we've got the conference coming right up, and wow, just kind of wanted to touch base. How are you feeling about it this year?
Great. Very exciting. It seems to be building momentum on its own accord.
Yeah. You've really seen it grow. I mean, so Mike and I were the, original founders. Mike is still very involved. He's the administrator. I'm the general. So we have a really nice dynamic where I kind of am the executor of certain functions, but then when it comes to standards and maintaining quality and just kind of seeing the big picture, getting perspective, anything like that, I go to Mike. And you really have the foresight and the vision, just to see what's going to work, what isn't. I mean, I pass things by you all the time. I say, what about this? And I always think of the, like you have a stamp basically. You can stamp your approval. You can veto things. It's very administrator themed if you think about it that way. Like fifth lines don't really have a stamp. I have I don't know what does the I guess I have a pointer and I point at the map.
Yeah, there you go.
I have my stick or something like that, and you have this stamp, and you go, rejected. That's not going to happen. Or you tell me, good idea, I like that, which is nice. But yeah, I mean, we've been doing it since the first year, and I guess the kind of third person from that first year was Jenny V, who really helped out mostly she was kind of the hands-on on the ground, and then last year we were joined by Jen and Brian, and they're also still helping this year, and it's a big group effort. I mean, there's a lot of people involved, but really Mike and I are kind of the founders of the first one, and it's really maintained, I think, a lot of our taste, really, what we like, right? I mean, we're both defined G centers. We don't always like the same things, but we both put a lot of what we like into the conference. It's like our kind of conference,
And we're both put off by a lot of the same things, too.
Yeah. I guess that's part of having a defined G is what you like, what you dislike, what is heartening to the spirit and what is disheartening, or what knocks the wind out of the sails of the spirit.
Yeah, we're both really aware and sensitive to that, it seems like.
Yeah, which is why, people will often make suggestions of things we could do at the conference. I'm open to all suggestions. I'm absolutely open to them. I do put a lot of thought into things where I don't like a situation where we're all sitting around in a circle and going around introducing ourselves. I'm the wah buster, I break it into pentas. I don't want a situation where, there's certain things that other conferences do that I just really don't want to do.
What does the wah do when it runs amok at a conference?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of, of course we're dealing with wah. I mean, we can't avoid it. It's just that first year, I think I surprised some people because we would all be going out to dinner and there'd be 15 or 20 of us, these different happy hours, and I'd be enforcing penta and saying, oh, no, this table's full. And they'd say, no, there's a chair, I'll bring it over. It's like, no, we already have 5 at that table. You can sit with these people over here. And people got really annoyed with me because I was doing what I could to prevent the wah from, I just didn't want to have a big, once you get multiple pentas, unless they are a clear division of roles, they tend to just collapse into chaos.
Yeah, penta enforcement, it kind of reminds me of something like sleeping alone, where when people are first getting into the experiment, it is something that has to be enforced and that you have to remind people of, and people might bristle about and feel that it's contrived. But eventually, once people are familiar with that, once they start to feel the mechanics for themselves, everyone prefers it. Everyone prefers sleeping alone. Everyone prefers groups of 5. Like, once you do notice it, you can't unnotice it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember during the spring fling, which was we had about 20 people come, and I was unable to enforce penta, and so we all ended up in a big group. And actually, even at the winter conference, the same thing happened both times because I just wasn't able to get there first and kind of be in charge. Somebody kind of jumped, in front of me and then said, come to this table. And you too, and brought, 8 people. And I was doing my best, but, I have an undefined throat. So if I'm not there first to kind of set it up and get it that way and get people to do it. So in both cases, we ended up that way. And I noticed both times at the winter conference, we're at a huge table. There's about 12 of us. First of all, they had to combine tables together. It took so long. In fact, a Penta showed up later and there wasn't room for them, and I was so jealous of them. They got their order in. We ordered first. Their food came first. We tried to get the bill. It took us 40 minutes to leave. Wow. They got the bill instantly and left. There was so much crosstalk. There was no substantial conversation whatsoever in our table. Nobody could talk. Everything was chaotic. There were 5 conversations at once. The entire thing. I mean, you pointed out that when you have larger groups, it tends to just revolve around this 0 point where there's no progress made. Yeah. You never get anywhere. You never actually take off and kind of move to a...
Yeah, nothing develops.
There's no development. Yeah. There's no development. And then at the spring event, I noticed that as well. We all ended up together or actually, you know what? I take that back. At the spring event, I enforced Penta, and I remember seeing you. You joined us in the back at Dinner for Two.
Oh, yeah.
Right. No, which is also a really funny name for a place. It's like the most anti-Penta name ever. Dinner for Two, they're like 2 people max per table. But in that case, so actually what I was thinking of was a couple weeks after that, I went back to Dinner for Two, ended up in another huge table, 12 people there. That was after the clothing swap offside release party. And the same thing happened where, believe me, the wait staff hates it. The servers can't stand those big tables because, they just keep coming and, are you guys ready to order? And somebody isn't. And it's almost like there's such a competition between the Pentas or over who's going to be in what Penta. Nobody knows what Penta they belong to. Right. So they're trying to get in this one, but the other one's trying to steal them over and get their attention. And so really, I guess the moral of the story is if you really want to have substantive conversations, limit the table to 5. And as soon as you get a 6th person, it really instills a lot of chaos. It's more than twice as chaotic having that 6th person than having 5. Which is not to say that the 5 will always be functional. There are dysfunctional Pentas. We were talking about that yesterday, how some Pentas aren't cohesive and they just end up being chaotic. But, at least you have a chance. So, that being said, I love Human Design Trivia Night because that's when Pentas battle each other. And that... There's no chaos there because there's clear roles. What team are you on? The teams are maximum 5. You know what team you're on. You're working with your people to compete with the other teams. And it brings a lot of clarity. What are some of your favorite nights or things we do at HDHD? For me, it's definitely Trivia Night. That's a big one.
Trivia Night's fun.
Did you do Trivia Night last year? Okay. Yeah, good.
And I like going to the tubs.
Yeah. Who doesn't?
That always fills up the fastest.
Who doesn't? Who doesn't like going to the? Yeah.
Oh, I really like the aura experiments.
Same. Yeah. I really enjoyed those.
Stephen
Rebolito did such a great job last year.
That was amazing. It really churned the neutrino stew we were all in.
Yeah. So for those who haven't heard of that, it's basically Stephen would divide the room into sacral versus non-sacral, or projectors in one area, manifestors the other, generators, manifesting generators, and then the reflectors in the middle. Or then we would divide into different groupings. So we would do defined root on one side, undefined root on the other. And the undefined root are just dancing. Yeah. And we're there with the defined root. We're just kind of standing there and just looking at each other. And, this is interesting, And you get the defined solar plexus, the undefined solar plexus. That was interesting.
And the when it was defined center and an undefined center, they would cross the room towards each other. And then all of a sudden you'd be in aura. You'd have like a bunch of defined hearts or a bunch of defined roots all at once.
Yeah, no, that is really interesting to see, and just kind of noticing the different groupings and what you notice in that grouping. And yeah, we're going to be doing more aura experiments this year. I'm going to be leading one. Sean's leading one. Sean Walbridge, and then we have Rachel Palella, who's doing like a quad right aura experiment. She's going to be a little bit different.
Mysterious.
And we actually are hoping Stephen will join. We have saved a spot for him.
Nice.
And I just sent him a message a couple days ago. It said, hope to see you there. And he gave me a thumbs up. So I'm hoping that that's a good sign. He is emotional authority. He's also innocence. And so that's something that actually came up for the conference this year is what do we do to support different people's strategies and different aura types and different things. And, we try to give people as much time as possible to make decisions, regardless. Like, I'm not emotionally defined, but I like a lot of time to make decisions. There are splenic people who want to have time to make decisions. We try to support that. But, there was one question, someone actually commented in the group, well, by doing RSVP, you're really excluding everyone who wants to make a decision in the moment. And I disagree, because they can still make that decision in the moment when they get here.
Yeah.
First of all, there are decisions in the moment as soon as you hear, like, do you want to RSVP to this? Decision in the moment,
Yeah,
yes.
clearly.
Decision in the moment, no.
Right.
You get a splenic hit to agree to it or not. So I think that's part of it. But then also, say you are somebody that you just don't know, and you're in that state of not knowing. Say you have 3955, and I don't know, or any individual circuitry for that matter, and you're in that state of just not knowing. That's okay. I mean, nothing can rush that knowing, and it's completely fine to not know and to show up to the conference not knowing. The question was, do you save extra spots for people who can't decide till they get there? And the answer is unequivocally no, because we don't play favorites, neither does the world. We're not giving anyone preferential treatment. And it's an experiment in decision making.
Totally.
So a huge part of that experiment is, if you know that you don't know if you want to do something or not, then you trust that you don't know. And that is the experiment, that by trusting that you don't know, you will reach your success, your satisfaction, your peace, your surprise. It's trusting that you're going to get, because it's not like, I think there's this kind of fear of missing out of, if I don't do something, I'm going to miss out. And what the fear of missing out is really the fear of not getting your signature. It's the generator who's afraid of being frustrated, not getting the satisfaction.
Yeah.
It's the projector who's afraid that they're going to miss out and not get that recognition and success of being invited to the right things. And so that fear of missing out, I mean, it's such a G center thing, right? It really is so much about the G center. And I think that's one of the tests is, good for you if you know enough to know that you don't know what you want to go to. That's already a huge triumph. If you see the RSVPs for the conference and you go, I don't know what I want to go to, well, good for you. Because a lot of people who are struggling with their strategy and authority will say, well, I don't know, but I better just pick something. And it's so much better to not make any decision than to, that's something human design teaches us again and again and again. It's valid to say you don't know, and it's valid to defer making a decision until the right time. And if the timing is wrong on the decision, then the decision is wrong. So, I mean, it's going to work out. I mean, there are so many, we have a lot of safety nets. So if you don't end up RSVPing, and then we're going to be, announcing, well, obviously there's last minute cancellations, there's last minute changes, there's last minute additions. You might end up hearing a last minute addition and then spontaneously in the moment going, that's amazing, and that could be correct for you. Or maybe you have an emotional process, you didn't have enough time to choose the RSVPs. I mean, we gave a couple months in advance, but you can't rush the wave. Sometimes a wave takes more than a couple months. Sometimes there's other waves going on. It's like an order of operations. And so say you don't decide in time, but then you do have clarity that you really want to spend time with a particular speaker, and that speaker makes a new event right at the last minute. Well, I would say in general, in that case, maybe not always, but you would probably have enough clarity about wanting to see that speaker that you go, oh, sure, I'm not nervous about this at all. I'm comfortable with this.
I've been waiting for something.
Like this. Yeah. So, I mean, it's really, the decision-making at the conference is no different than the decision-making outside of the conference. It's really just decision-making. And where do you end up? And what do you do? You didn't sign up to any RSVPs.
Oh, yeah. Well, because I didn't know what my energy level or I don't drive, so like if I have to get across town for something, I kind of don't know.
Well, and you're also not so afraid of missing out.
Yeah.
You're kind of like
because I just assume I'll end up at the stuff that I'm supposed to be.
You're going to spend the time. Yeah. People are going to invite you to the right things, and they're going to say, "Oh, Mike, you got to come to this," and you'll say, "But isn't it full?" And they'll say, "Yeah, but come on," or something like that. They'll invite you,
and people will drop out and stuff. It's like I'm kind of excited about everything, and like maybe I will have a more specific agenda as the conference draws closer, and then I'll try to make it to certain things. But meanwhile, it's like there's so many people I'm excited to see, so many different kinds of things that sound interesting. I'm just going to kind of follow what's available. Right?
We're both left angle, and it's not really about us either. I mean, it's like it's more like what can we do to make the thing go well? What can we do for the others?
Yeah, truly.
And it's a good point about energy level. You're doing. Let's see, you have 2 workshops. We actually are adding a third on Sunday, I believe. I was going to kind of.
But it's like the same one again, right?
Yeah. We're going to do another Personality Venus workshop, and a talk on the main stage. And I do my best not to overload undefined sacrals, to know when it's enough and not overload. At the same time, I think 1 session per day, because the point also is that it's about not overloading your sacral, meaning not making you work too hard.
Right.
But the smarter we do it, the more efficient we do it, getting your awareness. That's wonderful to be able to tap into that awareness. I guess what I'm saying is not that giving that isn't work, but that there's a different kind of work. There's working hard and working smart. And if we can really work smart, we can efficiently tap into your awareness in a way that doesn't overdo it.
Right. Yeah.
That's kind of part of the goal there. So, and I think part of that is just there is a big cost to context switching. So not having more than 1 event per day that's going to need you to prepare for and things like that. And just, the kinds of events that you're doing, so they're not so intensive. What kind of labor is needed for those events, right? And sometimes there is a bit of labor involved. Not just the physical labor of printing up charts or things like that, or talking or explaining, but the emotional labor if you're going deep with somebody and they have something come up, or the listening labor if you're really working in a kind of one-on-one situation and so on. So there's that, but no, I'm so appreciative. So what we have Mike for is Personality Venus workshop. Jupiter and Saturn, which is a great looking at those 2, and then we have your talk on tonal architecture, which is something I'm really excited about.
Nice.
So, yeah, those are. I know we did a Personality Venus thing before that was a huge hit. I think it went to 2 hours or something last time we did it at Human Design Catalyst. That was a really popular one.
Oh, nice.
So
it'll probably be like that. Again.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking is that I've been trying to also use my sense of measure of trying to set things to the right size, trying to size things. So I was really encouraging talks this year to be in the 50-minute range, because sitting and listening to someone speak, 50 minutes is pretty good. But then I've been encouraging workshops to have 2 hours. So have in between 10, 15 minutes, go for a walk, stretch your legs.
That makes sense,
come back and do the Q&A or something like that. So, and I think the whole point is this year we're going to stretch out a little bit. It was kind of packed last year, especially with the Quarter of Civilization. What did you think about last year? Was it compared to the first year? How would you compare them? Like, what were some of the differences?
Well, it was definitely more structured. More people knew what was going on when. There was less confusion. There was the same issue of like non-sacrals or whatever, feeling like they had to attend everything and having burnout within the first couple days.
Yeah, like that happened again. Times, Well, and it's also funny that we noticed last year, and I think it was true the first year as well, we just hadn't really tallied it up. Last year we had an exactly inverse proportion of sacrally defined people. We had 30% generator manifesting generator compared to the rest of the world where it's 70%.
Right.
And so it was so interesting to see this exactly opposite thing.
That is bizarre.
But also then that there's so much of a test of the undefined sacrals to like not overdo it. Like I'm seeing undefined sacrals sign up for a 10 a.m. talk and sign up for 10 p.m. to go to 10,000 waves. And I'm like, you better be sleeping for 6 hours in between.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to be able to do 10 a.m. to, at the same time, I don't want to prejudge. And I do think, especially like an undefined sacral, like a manifester, being an energy type, they sometimes do hibernate, come out of hibernate, have this explosive overabundance of, energy for a few days straight. And then they kind of go back into their rest zone. So, I don't want to prejudge anyone's decisions. I'm very approving of the decisions. I just kind of go, I'm a personality sun 46.5, pacing. Success only happens with pacing. It's the only way you can succeed is with pacing. It is succeeding where others fail. How do you do it? Pacing, right? Yeah, everyone else fails because they didn't have the pacing. They just like ran and they were like, I'm sprinting. And you're like, no, it's a marathon. Don't sprint. Just keep the pace. And everybody else is rushing, and then they just burn out, and you end up going slow. It's the tortoise and the hare, I'm the tortoise.
Right.
So I'm always going to and so people will say, well, Jonah, it seems like you've packed too much into the event. And it's like, do you go to a library and say they packed too many books? That was a really good point. I actually heard a media studies theorist say this. He said, people say they're overwhelmed by the vastness of the internet. I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all. That's like a fake argument. Like you're not overwhelmed. Like you're really not. Are you overwhelmed when you go into a library and look at all these books,
Right.
It's like, no, you're not. You're just where you are. It's something people like to say. I'm overwhelmed by the options. Not really. Not really. Not at all. You are where you are, and whether there's 1,000 options or 1,000,000 options or 100 options doesn't matter, because those are things you're not involved with. You're only involved where you are.
Right.
And so your decision-making process, guiding you through the trajectory moment to moment to be at the right place at the right time, and to take rest when you need rest, to take breaks when you need breaks. It's the fear of missing out that motivates people to sign up for more than they can chew, or,
And then they're not present where they are with the thing that they're actually.
Exactly. Yeah. I sent out a email this year saying, please do not sign up to adjacent workshops at different venues. If it's the same venue, fine. But if it's different venues, some of these, we're carpooling for some venues. The carpool leaves 15, 20 minutes before to give people time to settle and grab a cup of tea for the workshop. Very disrespectful to go from a 4 to 6 p.m. and then a 6 to 8 p.m. across town. You're not going to be able to do those. You're going to be leaving early, and then a bunch of people want to leave at the end of the workshop. It's so chaotic, and then they're going to show up late, and the workshop's going to like, do we wait for them? What do we do? It's just don't do it. The reason we have these workshops is because there's a lot of people coming, and the fact that the workshops are now filling up, and people are like, well, I didn't get to RSVP. It's like, yeah, because somebody RSVP'd to like back-to-back workshops. There were people RSVPing. There was a workshop from 1 to 4, and then they would RSVP from 1 to 4, and they'd have another one that goes from 2 to 4. And so you're literally planning on staying for only the first hour, and then there'd be another one that goes from 3:30 or 3, and they're doing all of them, and they're like, they really want to just like, and I even asked a couple people about it, and they're like, well, I don't really have the attention, I kind of just want to check them out. It's like, that's not what a workshop is. Like, you sign up for a workshop, you're signing up for it. We have a workshop coordinator this year. We've said multiple times, if anyone wants to know more about the speakers, look at their body graphs, learn about what they're doing, talk to our workshop coordinator. She will help you. So, this little, mini rant here from organizers. From my perspective, it's so much better to be really excited about a workshop than to just like, I guess I'll do that. Let's see what that's about. Like, you don't really need to. This is a real test in your decision making. And if you're sacral and you're like, sure, whatever, that means no. And if you're emotional and you go, oh, no, I better sign up because I'm not going to have time, that means no, right? If you're splenic and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do, that means no, because you haven't had a splenic hit to tell you what to do yet. So, it really is a big test. But it's also funny that this is all happening during the 360 transit, which you said yesterday is the jumping the gun. And I love that. The gun hasn't gone off yet, and the people start running, because they can't contain the pressure any longer, and they just want to jump the gun and go.
They're all adrenalized,
Yeah, people are really, exactly. We're all in this kind of let's do it. Let's make it happen. Let's, you know.
Good thing it'll be done by the time the conference actually starts.
Everyone's all like adrenalized and they sign up for all this stuff and all the undefined sacrals. 70% of the conference, undefined sacral.
Yeah. Again?
Well, so far, I mean, I've been
brother.
looking at the charts. Yeah, I mean, we'll get the actual statistics. We'll get the numbers later. There are not that many generators and MGs, but it's going to be funny because, you know, they're all signing up when their sacrals are amped up.
Yeah.
Then it's going to come around. They're not going to have. They're going to be like, why did I sign up for like 22 things in 5 days? Like, you know.
There's been emotional definition this week and last week too, I think.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Mars and Saturn making the 3740.
Oh, interesting.
And so that's also inclusion, exclusion, right? So that could be.
Oh, and I've been, look how hard I work for you. Look how much I do.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I've been doing that. So, but no, it's gonna be great. I mean, it always works out. I mean, you either have the amazing experience or you have the less than amazing experience. But even the less than amazing experiences, I mean, I don't think maybe like one person had a bad time. I mean, it's really everyone pretty much has a great time. It's there's so many safety nets in place. I mean, I think about that way too. If you design a system where someone has to do something to make sure they have a good time, it's not really a good system.
Good point. Yeah.
I mean, the system is basically, if we designed it right, then they're going to show up and there's safety nets in place where if they, like, we're not letting them make bad decisions. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you make your decision for yourself, but we're not really, there are no bad workshops. Like, we're doing, like, wherever you end up, there's going to be something to do with people to talk to.
Right.
You're going to have your own experience. I mean,
and at the other conferences, it's always been like some of the most affecting experiences that people have are those that are totally unplanned, not things that they signed up for. Sometimes stuff between workshops or between classes or after the day is wrapped up. You know, it's like you never like you don't know what you're going to get from the workshops, and then you also don't know what you're going to get just by being in Aura with all these people that have all these different perspectives and experiences and stuff.
And there's going to be communalists and there's going to be separatists.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that is a fundamental binary from the very beginning. You know, that's a color one binary. Mm-hmm. And the separatists are always going to be like the cool kids smoking cigarettes on the side of the building, saying, you know, talking smack about the in-group. Mm-hmm. And then the in-group is always going to be like, why isn't everybody else hanging out with us? This is great in here. So, I mean, there's going to always be a communalist separatist division. And that's okay too. I mean, the communalists and the separatists have to peacefully coexist, and there has to be space for both of them. Of course, the communalists can't make space for the separatists because then separatists wouldn't want it. Mm-hmm. Part of it is the rejection of everything the communalists have done. Mm-hmm. So we also kind of, you know, account for that insofar as if you're coming to the conference and you don't want to do what's going on, you can have your own, you know, pirate thing. And that's fine too. Set up a pirate sound system. And
that'd be cool.
I encourage that. But then, of course, that makes it less exciting for them because part of being a separatist is like, you know, going against what's encouraged. So don't do it. It's very, you know, reverse psychology.
We'd hate that.
We'd hate if somebody made their own pirate conference during our conference. That would
not be mutative.
That would not be mutative at all. No, making their own thing. I mean, how boring. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's wow, it's a lot, but I am just so excited for your talks this year, for the workshops. I'm so excited who's coming this year. I mean, just looking through our list of attendees, it's like, I don't know, the tribal part of me is like family, the collective part of me is like these are like the living legends of human design in some ways. And
it is, kind of, yeah.
And then the individual part of me is just, I get to create.
There's an individual part of you?
Absolutely. All of you saw those tote bags.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you saw those tote bags. I mean, you see, even the schedule is much more individual because it's my creative expression.
Totally.
My unique voice. Mm-hmm. So people say, Jonah, why did you put all these next to each other? It's all done with tremendous thought. Mm-hmm. Like, I want to go to all of these talks. Why are they all at the same time? Because everyone wants to go to all those talks.
There you go.
And so if we put them at different times, people don't go to the other talks. Yeah, you know what I mean? Gotcha. Like, I'm like, there's just a lot of stuff like that. Or, I mean, it's really just what it comes down to is I'm doing the kind of conference I'd want to attend.
Nice.
And if others want to attend that too, great. But I can't do the kind of conference that they'd want to attend because if I start there, I'm starting with this design by committee thing, and that's not how it works. All creativity is individual.
There you go.
Like, I mean, sure, we have creative channels of the tribal creativity, logic, so on. But all true creative impulses, mutative impulses, come from the individual. And so when I'm creating, I mean, it really is the schedule itself, and I don't mean like how it looks, which I know you're doing this year, which is awesome, but I just mean like the actual order of things. Like that is a
the
creative
thing you're
act.
building. Yeah,
that is an absolutely creative act. And the tote bags are creative, and what we put in the tote bags, and even kind of working with the different speakers and saying, well, this sounds great, let's do this then, and how do we group it, and that whole aspect of it really is fun for me because I put on the same hat that I put on when I'm doing an album. It's the hat of setting the stage. It's very theatrical. I've always made music that's very theatrical. It's very cinematic, very atmospheric.
True.
And it sets the tone, and there's a build. And I'm always, when I'm doing music, I'm always thinking of the difference of predictability versus surprise. And what is predictable and what is the surprise? And too much surprise, too much chaos. Too predictable, too boring. And how do we integrate those two? How do we work in a way that is predictable enough, people have the coordinates, but then they get surprised by what they weren't expecting. So some fun surprises this year. Well, let's see, anything in, I guess my only question for you would just be kind of any sneak peek of what you're going to be talking about, or I guess people who know you will kind of, I mean, there's already, your workshops filled up so fast, I just have to say. First day, I mean, they were just, bam, filled right up. So I guess most people kind of have an idea of what to expect, I would guess.
Yeah. I think the talk will surprise a lot of people, maybe. It's a subject I don't hear a lot of people talk about, so we'll see.
Your take on the tones.
But then another big surprise is a while ago I invented a game, probably over a year ago, and I didn't think of it in time to put it on the schedule or anything, so it'd be just like an after-conference social kind of thing. But, after playing this game a few times, I realized how helpful it is for mood, for individual circuitry mood. It's basically like a mood amplification game. And it was one of these this wasn't something I sat down at a desk and tried to figure out. I think I was on an airplane for the first time or whatever and just had the inspiration to play. It's sort of like a language game. And I just did it for the first time and it was immediately effective. It sort of sublimates whatever the mood is into it elaborates the mood, basically. It takes your mood and amplifies it. And sometimes in the moment it can be like a mood cohering device. But anyway, so that's something that no one knows about.
Really exciting. Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, that's very exciting. And I mean, we've all been feeling the moods lately with that 360. And so anything that helps those moods cohere or even just be verbalized or be,
Because we already know that with individual moods, it seeks right? With the moods, when you're in a mood, you have a craving for something, whether that's a food or a kind of music or you know what I mean? It's very discriminating about what it likes to have around. This 63 is making everyone really irritable. They might sit down at a restaurant and be like, I need to be somewhere else, or they might need to not be around a person they normally like, and things like that.
That was me this morning. I just wanted to sit outside in the cool with my coffee, and Vaughn said, Jonah, do you ever hallucinate? And I just got up and left.
Nope.
I couldn't take it. I could not take it.
Yeah.
Not in the mood for this conversation right now. I mean, it's I don't know what he's getting at, but
But then at the same time, when you have these irritated, moody individual circuitry periods, there's also stuff will hit more than normal when it's correct. It's you can have a more affecting relationship to music if it's the right song during that time, or you can be really moved by ocean waves or the sunset or whatever when you're in an individual melancholy state.
Oh, that's an interesting, I hadn't really made that connection of it's kind of, you're in a heightened, that moodiness goes both ways where it's agitated, but it's also, it can be soothed at a much more deep level than it can normally be soothed.
Right.
This is kind of a heightened state of reactivity to triggers to the mood.
Yeah, because it's developing, not the mutation is developing novelty, and it's trying to do something very specific, and so it just seeks like externally, whether that's music or environment or people. It's like it wants things that will support its whatever frequency, character, nature. And the thing is, those things can be so irrational, and it could be you want to listen to a kind of music that you normally can't stand or something, or it could be you want to do something that you never think of doing, or maybe something that you don't normally like doing the dishes. Sometimes you can really be in the mood for that, and that will do so much for your mood because it somehow has some sort of like isomorphic quality with the invisible intermutation that's happening.
There's some secret correspondence, kind of like a glass speed game or something, where everything has these secret affinities, and you have some mood, but you don't really know how to verbalize it or express it. And of course, we know from, well, we should never try to explain why or where the mood came from. It's not about any of that, but yet that mood has a hidden affinity with a certain kind of art,
Exactly,
a certain kind of music, a certain attitude, a certain, it's like you're just not in the mood for the normal things. You turn on the normal TV show, I can't watch this right now. You turn on the normal comedy, I can't watch this. Speaking of, Vaughn finally got hip to I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson.
Cool.
Which was so
Nice.
funny. Last night, I mean, you were there, and he
liked it.
Oh, he was talking about today. He was saying that was so funny. I mean, he that struck him. That's a show where I have tried to show him that before. He has not been in the mood, and he's just left. And he was in the mood last night because he really liked it. It got through to him. So yeah, that's a really interesting point. I think I have a lot to learn about mood. You embody moods, you live with moods, you have a lot more time on the clock having moods because you have every day of your life, because you actually have moody life force energy. So if you think of like how many hours accrued learning about moods, whereas I learn about moods when I'm around somebody who kind of brings that out of me, or when there's a long-term transit that builds up that mood, but not having any individual circuitry, I mean, I'm here to kind of go to school in the school of mood and learn about mood, but I don't necessarily have that experience. So,
and so this game or this tool that I developed, it doesn't really find activities for you. It doesn't really find things that will meet your mood, but it does. It can point you at those things. Basically, it's a language amplification game, and the images and words that come up during the game can sometimes just invoking them through language is enough to help your mood, but other times it can remind you of stuff outside of your normal the things that you're used to doing. It can find stuff beyond that you can pull it and be like, oh, actually doing the dishes would really slap right now,
right. Or I actually am in the mood to clean up around here, or I'm totally not in the mood to clean up, I'm just going to go for a walk, or however it is. It's that's really I think I often just get in a mood and I don't really have any tools to, not even that, tool isn't even the right term, but I don't necessarily have even ideas of just ways to engage with that mood or to understand it. I kind of just put up with it. I just tolerate moods. I'm just kind of like, I'm in this mood now. I guess it'll go away at some point on its own. And then the next day it's still there. And then I go for a walk or something. And sometimes, I do notice certain things that will help me work through a mood. But then it's difficult because that mood, it can be this sort of, you get stuck in the mood and then you don't want to do the thing that, like, I know I'd be put in a better mood if I exercised, but I'm not in the mood to exercise or something like that. Like there's this kind of stasis that where as long as you're trying to run away from it, you're not really surrendering to it or accepting it.
Yeah. And we know that what acceptance has to do with mutation.
Right, absolutely. That you can only transcend through accepting and through surrendering to that limitation.
Yeah, and so it's like matching the mood, I guess, is accepting it because you're allowing it to do its whatever irrational thing.
Yeah, I still try to reconcile mood as melancholy and the creative force of mood with what Steve Rhodes calls the mood setter, and that maybe is a different term. I don't know.
I suspect they're related. I
think they have to be related. It's just kind of interesting because his idea of the mood setter is tone.
Yeah.
And that this is what puts you in a quote unquote good mood, or what makes your mood. I don't know. It's an interesting idea. Like, I've definitely noticed triggers around that. Also, I was talking to James Alexander the other day, and he was mentioning personality Venus can be specifically triggers, I guess, on the personality side. I don't know if design Venus has the same quality of triggering, like on the body side of what's kind of triggering to the unconscious. But because both get triggered. The personality can get offended or hurt, but the unconscious can get triggered, and that's kind of a grip experience where you're suddenly in the grip of a foul mood that comes out of nowhere, and you're like, where did that even come from? It's just your body is creating a chemical cocktail that. So I guess it can happen on either side. But it was interesting to think of Venus in that role, and I guess it is triggering when somebody violates your standards or when you have a standard that isn't met. But then I also wonder, since Venus is not part of the diagonal, if as we decondition, we kind of lose our triggers or we become less easy to trigger. Right? Like it's interesting, like, could you trigger Ra? I mean, I'm sure you could make him leave, but was he really triggered, or did he just leave because he got sick of it? And he actually, Ra had a really funny idea of, and it's not, I don't recommend anyone do this, but he said, if you really want to test how far somebody is in their human design experiment, go after the undefined ego. If they have an undefined ego, just start picking on the undefined ego and see how quickly they jump to prove and so on. And I don't recommend anyone does this, but his point was just...
Is there a workshop for that? Is that a conference activity?
It's, it's kind of, we get somebody up and we... So, you're what you have to offer is of no value to us. What do you mean it's of no value? I have something of value to offer. I'll prove it to you.
You're really not doing enough.
You're not doing enough in the world, Are you really contributing enough to kind of equal all that you take?
Why are you here?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's really...
Fun improv games. Yeah. Bring people up on stage during
not
the conference.
Self-improv. Let's do it. Yeah, let's see if we can trigger people. No, we're definitely not going to do that. But
well, I've got a lot to say about the Venus thing, but I could also save it for my workshop.
Yeah. I think let's do that. I mean, if you want to give people like one little sound bite about Venus, or just clue of what to look at. Say I'm looking at my personality Venus.
Yeah. Well, so it's like the standard. It's the standard that that exists for you, and so I think a big part of developing your personality Venus is sort of recognizing that it only applies to you, and that standard exists for you, and no one else is supposed to have it. And unlike Jupiter, which is the law, and you don't have a Jupiter return until you're like 13, 14, apparently the law is imposed upon you from without. But your Venus return is like before you're 1, and so it's as if that standard has always been there, because you have no memories before that standard is reinstantiated, really. Does that make sense?
Oh, that's right. Like it's so personal to us, and even in astrology, we differentiate between the personal and the transpersonal planets, and that's a really good point. That what is the difference between Venus and Jupiter is kind of the scale or the scope,
right? And
that we've had Venus imprinting us even before our first birthday.
Exactly.
And that's really profound. I mean, the idea that before even our
you're like such a sponge, because like with Jupiter, when you like understand your law or whatever, it's like, I don't always like this law either, but I have to put up with it. Like it feels like it's been given to you. But with Venus, it's so intimate, so it's ego, right? It's
right.
It's ego. So it's like it's internal. It's like it's always been there, and you just take it for granted, and you assume that anyone who is raised right, or anyone who's living their design, or anyone who's good is going to have that same standard.
Didn't your mother teach you anything?
Exactly.
Nobody does this, or nobody does that.
Or it's just common sense. This
is just the way you're supposed to do it, and the way you should do it.
Yeah. You're not going to be saying that about your Jupiter placement, but with Venus, it's like, well, everyone should abide by this if they're a good person. Like, of course, blah blah blah.
Well, that's a really good tidbit, and for anyone watching at home who wants to look at their personality Venus, read the line from the Rei Ching. Consider how that line is so intimate to the standard that you expect, and then consider that through the deconditioning process, this becomes less important, and perhaps not that being less important, but less universalized, or you don't expect others to live up to that standard.
Yeah.
It kind of goes back to its correct place, which is as your standard.
Right.
What you bring to things. Like, I bring to things the standard of, I think people should commit their energy or something like that.
And just trust that you have it and that it's existing at a really high bar for you no matter what. So you don't have to like keep meeting your own standard. It's kind of like you can err on the side of taking it less seriously because you're going to default to taking it extremely seriously.
That's a really interesting point that, right. That it's, and because on the personality side, it's something that we kind of bring with us everywhere we go. And we kind of, I like to think of the personality as, what gives us continuity, what we bring to every interaction. And the design is like sometimes there, sometimes isn't, comes out in spurts, kind of appears when we get stuck or reach a dead end, something that leads to the development to the next step, and surprises us, kind of comes out of the blue. And then it's, if there's some, hero's quest, it's kind of like the hero gets stuck. That's the personality getting stuck in an attitude that no longer serves it, and then is saved by a chance occurrence. That's the design coming along, saving the day right when the least expected. Kind of the personality can only go so far on its own, and then it needs to wait. And actually, it's not even that the design is catching up, it's that the design is working backwards from the future, almost building the bridge for us to step into.
Cool.
If you think of it that way, it's 88 degrees before, which also means it's 88 degrees ahead of us. Right. And so as we're walking, it's building the steps we're walking on.
True.
So,
that's really good. Yeah.
Kind of a way to think of that.
I was just stepping into it.
Just talking to Richard about that. About personality and design. Really excited about Ashley Gray Duncan's talk on personality and design as well. I really hope we can get that one recorded. She did say she's going to record it. So, yeah, there's quite a lot of logistics with a distributed conference like this. It's one thing to get it all documented when it's at one place, but we have people running all over the place and all these different venues. So. That's been kind of fun too, and I'll just say spreadsheets really help. So, well, this has been great. This is a really wonderful chat. I'm really excited about the Personality Venus workshops. Obviously, Jupiter and Saturn, great topic, and then the main stage talk on tonal architecture. Really excited to get your perspective on that, and it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to it. So. Any final thoughts on the conference? Any advice? Anyone? What do you think? What would you tell somebody if they're going to come to the conference next year? What should they know? Because mostly this will be for the people who are watching at home and who weren't able to make it.
I mean, it really is worth the price of admission just to be around a bunch of people that are living their design. Like when you are doing a lot of socializing with people who are so much themselves, there's just like less resistance in general. And you really have to feel it to believe it. It's so different than, no matter how close you are with your community and your friends or whatever, like unless all those people are into human design, like spending hours every day with human design people, there's just like an ease that is not familiar from everyday life for me.
That's a good
really
point.
Surprised me the first conference, and then by the second conference I was expecting it, and it is pretty consistent. And even when we've had those smaller conferences, it's like that.
Oh yeah.
And it's and because it is like deconditioned undefined centers are going to continue to amplify, and so there's just a whole lot of mutual amplification of very like clean, coherent energy.
Right. People are amplifying satisfaction, not frustration, or they're amplifying clarity, or they're amplifying peace. Or, that's a really good point. There is a nice buzz of just a lot of really peaceful, satisfied, successful people, some surprised people in there. It's really sweet.
Nobody playing weird games or doing.
Yeah, there's not a lot of disappointment.
Front end being fake or.
No, it's really that's a great
negotiating power. I don't know. What do people do in normal life?
I guess so.
What do people want?
What do they want? All right. Well, thank you for joining. This was really wonderful.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.